Hi, and welcome back to this tutorial series where we are going to continue to go over the various settings within Fantasy Grounds Unity in relation to configuring a given campaign. In this short video, we are going to go over the extensions selection of the campaign configuration screen, starting with the type of extension called a feature extension. Feature extensions are not extensions that deal with racial or class features that in turn deal with skills, feats, or class and race specific enhancements, though they can be used for a number of different things. In this case, they are generally used to enable or enhance specific aspects of a given rule set, or introduce an entirely new enhancement that is there to help a DM or player interact with Fantasy Grounds Unity in a different or more efficient way. The latter type is usually introduced through a community extension, and we will cover those in a later video. And in this video, we'll just focus on the general feature extensions that can exist. On my system, you can see that I have two feature extensions for the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule set. Both of these are official language fonts, and while I do have two of them that seem to have the same name, I actually have a different one here, and this is because of what module introduced them. I'm pretty certain this one was introduced by the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player's Handbook, while this one here was introduced by the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, because this one adds specific languages to the Forgotten Realms setting. Language fonts, however, are optional in relation to Fantasy Grounds, and they are there to provide a little bit more variety in the chat logs when players are either interacting with one another or through one or more NPCs. It allows for those conversations to be encoded in a visual way using the languages that a character can understand. Hence, why they are called a feature, because they are adding an enhancement to the overall playing experience. If you select the Fate Core rule set, you will see that it has a feature extension called Blank Skills. I honestly don't know anything about what that means for that given rule set, as I've never used it, but it is an example where a feature has been added through the rule set itself. Most, if not all of these kinds of extensions, are going to only be compatible with a specific rule set, and those provided by the modules released by Smiteworks will only show up if and only if the matching rule set is selected, specifically 5th edition for the language fonts, Fate Core for this Blank Skills, and I actually honestly haven't checked to see if there are any others that are there. There is another kind of extension that is related to the feature extensions, and they would be those that would be developed by the community. They behave in a similar fashion to feature extensions, but I'm not going to cover them here, and I'll do that in another video, as there are other unrelated concerns and issues that you need to keep in mind. Now, one of the last things that I want to point out before we move on to the next topic is that once an extension has been selected and you've loaded or created your campaign, that selection will show up at the top of the list, whereas you can see here, 5e Advanced Effects and 5e Encounter Difficulty Calculator are below these three selected features. If I go back to this, you'll see that they're at the top. That's because I have nothing here that has been selected. So it's a nice, convenient, and quick way to very quickly understand which features you have selected, rather than having to search through them like you had to previously. One of the other things that you may have noticed if you were paying attention between this video and the previous videos is that the extensions window is no longer showing decals. And that is because Smiteworks has moved the management of decals into Fantasy Grounds proper, specifically through the campaign settings window, although you can still manage it through the assets window. So we'll cover decals once we actually get into the internal settings configurations. But with that, let's move on to the next topic.